Welcome to the Deep Dive, where you get the inside scoop on a whole mountain of information without having to climb it yourself. Today, we're focusing on a true legend in the world of wine, Renato Ratti, and how he shaped Barolo. We've gone through articles, expert opinions, you name it. And our goal today is to really get why Ratti is considered such a pioneer and a visionary. Like, what did he actually do? What were his beliefs? What made him so special? So think of this deep dive as a shortcut to understanding a key player in the history of Barolo.
And to understand his impact, you kind of have to go back in time a bit. Picture Barolo before Ratti came along back in the mid-20th century. Winemaking then, it was all about tradition, really long macerations, I'm talking weeks, for the Nebbiolo grapes. And then aging, years upon years in these huge Slavonian oak barrels, the botti, which gave the wine a certain, often subtle character. So what you got was a Barolo that was super powerful, no doubt, lots of structure, tons of tannins, but often pretty austere, not very approachable when it was young. They really needed a long time in the bottle to soften up and show their best.
So not exactly something you'd just casually open on a weeknight. These were wines for the long haul. And the Piemonte region itself was also in a state of change, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Agriculture was the heart of it all, and as winemaking was important culturally, of course, but it hadn't quite reached the level of worldwide recognition and sophistication that it would later on. You had all sorts of producers, from small family wineries, very traditional, to bigger operations, each with their own way of doing things. The idea of terroir, the whole connection between soil, climate, and tradition, giving the wine its unique personality and using grapes from single vineyards, it was just starting to gain traction, but wasn't widespread. And if you were a regular wine drinker back then, trying to figure out what made one Barolo different from another, well, it wasn't always clear what set them apart in terms of quality or style.
So you have this backdrop of tradition or a region that's still finding its way, and then enters Renato Ratti. What was he like in those early days? What shaped his view of wine?
It's interesting, right? Ratti was born in 1934 and grew up surrounded by winemaking in Piemonte. His family, they weren't winemakers themselves, but wine was such a big part of life there. From a young age, he would have been exposed to vineyards, the whole harvest atmosphere, the smells, the tastes. So even without a family legacy in winemaking, being immersed in that culture must have left a mark. Those early sensory experiences probably planted the seed for his passion and shaped his path.
It's amazing how those early, almost subconscious experiences can guide you. But Ratti didn't just stop at those childhood impressions. He got formal training, right?
Oh yeah, he did. He went to the University of Alba, which was and still is a top school for enology. That education was key. He dove deep into viticulture, learning about the vine's life cycle, the types of soil, the techniques, the impact of climate, all that. And in enology, he learned the science of turning grapes into wine. Fermentation, different
Yes.
winemaking methods, the chemistry, the microbiology, even the art of tasting and analyzing wine. This gave him the knowledge and the tools to really scrutinize traditional practices, think critically, and start coming up with his own innovative ideas.
So he had a solid academic base. Was there anyone in those early years, maybe teachers or mentors, who really shaped his thinking?
Most likely, yeah. The sources suggest there were probably influential figures in his life, maybe professors at Alba who were ahead of their time, or even some winemakers who were already pushing boundaries and experimenting. These people probably played a big part in shaping his critical thinking, encouraging that innovative spirit we see in him, and solidifying his vision for the future of Piemonte wines. It just goes to show that even the most groundbreaking people build upon the work and knowledge of those who came before them.
And after all this learning, he steps into the professional world as an enconologist. What were his first moves, and how did his winemaking philosophy start to take shape?
It's likely he started working at wineries in Piemonte, putting his knowledge to practice, getting his hands dirty. And it was during this time that his core philosophy about making wine really started to crystallize.
Mhm.
It was based on three main pillars: a deep understanding and respect for the terroir of the region, a strong belief in the potential of Piemonte's native grapes, especially Nebbiolo, of course, and this absolute dedication to quality, to making the best possible wine, no compromises. So you could say his approach was all about meticulously selecting the grapes, controlling the fermentation process really precisely, and being very careful with aging to let that unique character of the place shine through in the wine.
So a blend of modern science-based thinking and a real reverence for the land and the grape. It sounds like the perfect recipe for some serious change. What was Ratti's vision for Barolo? What did he want to see happen?
He was really forward-thinking. He envisioned Barolos that were elegant and complex, capable of aging for a long time. That was a must for him, but maybe with a bit more finesse and approachability in their younger years compared to some of the rougher, more traditional styles. He was convinced that Nebbiolo could produce wines with beautifully balanced tannins, that zingy acidity, and those layered aromas that just get more interesting over time. And that emphasis on rewarding patience, waiting for the wine to reach its full potential, that became a hallmark of his style.
And as we've said, terroir is crucial for understanding Barolo. How did Ratti approach that?
This is where he really shines as a pioneer. Ratti was among the very first in Barolo to truly grasp the significance of terroir and its impact on Nebbiolo. He went all in on mapping and studying the subtle differences between different Barolo vineyards. He believed that each plot of land had its own unique set of characteristics that would show up in the wine. He was meticulous, looking at the soil composition, the amount of sunlight each area got, the altitude, even the microclimate of each spot. This deep understanding was crucial for him to pinpoint those exceptional vineyard sites, what we call the crusts, the really special places. And his work with the Marsanasco vineyard showed this link between a specific site and the unique character of the wine it produced.
And this wasn't just theory, right? He put this knowledge into practice.
Oh yeah, absolutely. He started vinifying grapes from single vineyards separately, and Marsanasco was a prime example. By doing that, he showed very clearly how much terroir influences the final wine. And that laid the groundwork for how we appreciate Barolo today, with its geographical distinctions and single vineyard bottlings.
So dedicated to the land and also to the star of the show, the Nebbiolo grape itself.
For sure. He saw the incredible potential in Nebbiolo, its ability to develop those super complex aromas, its natural elegance, and its capacity to age for a really long time. And this dedication to quality, it wasn't just a slogan, it was woven into every step of his process. He believed in understanding the unique personality of each vineyard, of each little piece of land, and then crafting wines that reflected that origin, each with its own identity.
We've touched on the importance of aging several times. It seems this was fundamental to Ratti's approach.
You got it. He understood that Nebbiolo, with its big tannins, high acidity, and that complexity of aromas, it was made for aging. To him, a young Barolo wasn't the finished product. It was like a promise, something that needed time to mature and reveal all its layers. He really encouraged patience, letting the wine evolve in the bottle. Over time, the tannins would soften, the acidity would integrate, and all these amazing tertiary aromas would develop. Things like leather, truffle, sometimes even a hint of tar. And that focus on aging potential was huge for Barolo's reputation as a collectible, age-worthy wine.
You've brought up Marsanasco a few times, clearly a special place for Ratti. Can you tell us about how he acquired it and why it was so important?
Oh, it's a turning point in his career.
Yeah.
It was in the late 1960s that he got his hands on the Marsanasco vineyard in Lamora, one of the subregions of Barolo. Now, Lamora is known for producing Barolos that are a bit softer, more approachable when young, with more aromatic complexity compared to some other areas. And Ratti saw in Marsanasco the potential for a Barolo that fit perfectly with his vision: elegant, complex, and age-worthy.
So what makes the terroir of Marsanasco so special? What are those unique characteristics you mentioned?
Let's break it down. First, you have the soil. Marsanasco is dominated by calcareous marl, specifically from something called the San Agata Fossili Formation. It's a mix of limestone and clay, and that's a great combination for vines. The limestone gives excellent drainage, helps regulate the water, and even adds a mineral quality to the wines. Plus, it helps with the soil's pH balance. The clay, on the other hand, retains water really well, which is super important during those hot, dry summers in Piemonte.
Sounds like a really balanced soil composition. What about the climate in Marsanasco?
The climate there is typical continental. Cold winters, hot, dry summers. But what's interesting is that the Alps nearby have a moderating effect. They help soften those temperature extremes and bring some good rainfall. And importantly, Marsanasco sits at a medium altitude, around 350 to 400 meters above sea level. This means there's the big difference between day and night temperatures. This is great for the grapes. The warm days help the Nebbiolo ripen fully, develop those sugars and flavors, while the cool nights preserve the acidity and help develop complex aromas.
And I imagine the direction the vineyard faces, the exposure, also matters for how the grapes grow.
Absolutely. Marsanasco has fantastic sun exposure. Most of it faces south and southwest, which means the vines get lots of sunlight throughout the growing season. And for Nebbiolo, with its long ripening period, that sunlight is crucial. It helps develop those compounds that give structure and color to the wine, like tannins and anthocyanins, which are essential for aging. Plus, the altitude helps make the most of that sun exposure and also improves air circulation in the vineyard, which helps concentrate those compounds and prevents diseases.
So it's the whole package. The soil, the climate, the sun exposure, the altitude, all of it working together is what makes Marcinasco so unique. And what about those early Marcinasco wines that Ratti produced? What were they like?
They were a statement, a clear expression of his innovative, elegant style. These early Marcinasco Barolos had this vibrant ruby color and these incredibly intense, complex aromas. You'd get fresh red fruit, cherry, raspberry, strawberry, mixed with delicate floral notes like rose and violet, hints of licorice, and this underlying earthiness. And as they aged, they'd evolve even more, showing notes of leather, truffle, even a bit of tar. In your mouth, they were known for these really refined, silky tannins, a bright, vibrant acidity, a medium body, and a long finish that echoed the fruit and spice. What was cool was that these wines showed that Barolo could be enjoyable young, while still having the potential to age for decades and get even more complex. It cemented Ratti's reputation as a visionary and a real innovator.
And it sounds like Marcinasco wasn't just important for Ratti himself, it also helped put Barolo on the map globally.
Totally. Ratti's focus on elegance and expressing the unique character of Marcinasco helped broaden the perception of Barolo. It showed that Barolo wasn't just about power and tannin, but could also be refined, complex, and approachable earlier on. The Marcinasco wines became synonymous with quality and represented a style that bridged tradition and modernity. It became a reference point for other producers in the region, encouraging them to focus on their own terroir and strive for higher quality. And Ratti's work on mapping vineyards helped everyone, from winemakers to drinkers, understand and appreciate the incredible diversity of terroirs within Barolo, including how special Marcinasco was. And the consistency of the Marcinasco wines, even after Ratti's passing, solidified its iconic status. It's still admired for its elegance, complexity, and aging potential, really showcasing what Lamora can do.
We've talked about his vision and his impact, but can you dig a little deeper into Ratti's overall philosophy of wine production? What were his guiding principles?
Well, at the heart of it, Ratti was all about quality. It wasn't just a goal, it was like a religion for him. It guided every single decision, from tending the vines to bottling the wine. He had a holistic approach, meaning he paid close attention to every little detail in the process, and that's what resulted in these wines that were so expressive, complex, and age-worthy.
And it wasn't just about what happened in the cellar, right? He was also very conscious of how the grapes were grown.
Oh, for sure. He was deeply connected to the land and knew he had to protect it for future generations. Sustainability and respect for the environment were central to how he worked the vineyards. His goal was to make great wine while also preserving the delicate ecosystem of his vineyards. So, he focused on keeping the soil healthy, encouraging biodiversity, maintaining a natural balance by using organic fertilizers, integrated pest management, and minimizing the use of harsh chemicals. He was also mindful of resources, using water efficiently, like smart irrigation, and trying to be energy efficient in the winery, maybe exploring renewable energy and reducing his carbon footprint. He even cared about preserving the beauty of the landscape, respecting the natural contours, the native plants, making sure the vineyards blended harmoniously with the surroundings.
And in the cellar, when it came to actually making the wine, what was his approach? Strictly traditional, or did he embrace new ideas?
It's a really cool mix of respecting tradition and bringing in innovation. He saw the value in the old ways, but wasn't afraid to modernize things if it meant making better wine, as long as it didn't compromise the heart of what Barolo was. For fermentation and maceration, he used a mix of traditional wooden vats, modern stainless steel tanks, and even concrete, choosing the right one for the style of wine he was going for. He was meticulous about the length of maceration to get the right balance of tannins and color, and he preferred using indigenous yeasts, the ones naturally found in the vineyard and winery, for that extra layer of complexity and regional character. He was also very particular about oak. He'd think about the type Slavonian for subtlety, French for intensity, the size of the barrels, even how much the wood was toasted, from light for vanilla notes to more intense for spice. And of course he knew that aging was key, especially for Barolo. He'd use a mix of large Slavonian casks, smaller French barriques, even glass demijohns, letting the wine slowly develop those complex aromas and soften those tannins, which all contributed to the aging potential of his wines.
So he sounds like a very meticulous, forward-thinking winemaker who is in tune with the land. Now let's talk about the wines themselves. Can you give us a rundown of some of his most important bottlings?
Yeah, his wines really are a testament to the place and his dedication. So let's start with the icon, the Barolo Marcinasco. This is from that famous Lamora vineyard and captures that elegant traditional style. On the nose, you get those amazing aromas we talked about. Bright cherry, raspberry rose, violet, a hint of licorice and earthy notes that, with time, develop into leather, tobacco, and spice. On the palate, it's all about the silky tannins, a bright acidity, a medium body, and a long finish with red fruit and mineral notes. And it ages beautifully, like 10 to 20 years or more.
Sounds like the classic Ratti style. What about his other Barolos?
Well, there's the Barolo Roche dell'Annunziata. This one's from another prestigious crew and is all about elegance, complexity, and longevity. You get intense aromas of rose, violet, ripe red fruits, herbs, spices, and this distinct minerality that can even develop into white truffle and licorice as it ages. On the palate, it's incredibly refined, silky tannins, vibrant acidity, a medium body, and a long, complex finish with those floral and mineral notes. This one's built for aging, like 15 to 30 years or even longer. Then you have the Barolo Conca from a vineyard in Lamora that's perfectly positioned for sun exposure. This one's more concentrated, structured, and intense. You get aromas of ripe dark fruit, black pepper, star anise, some balsamic hints, and a strong minerality. It's powerful and concentrated in the mouth, with firm but balanced tannins, that vibrant acidity that supports the fruit in a fuller body. The finish is long, with dark fruit and spice, and it can age for a long time, 15 to 30 years, easily.
So a range of Barolo styles, all from Lamora. What about wines beyond Barolo?
He also made some fantastic wines with other Piemonte grapes. His Nebbiolo d'Elba is a younger, more approachable expression of Nebbiolo with softer tannins and more forward fruit aromas. You'll find fresh red fruit, cherry, raspberry, some floral notes, a bit of spice. It's lighter in body, very fruity, with those softer tannins and a refreshing acidity. It's meant to be enjoyed a bit younger, within 5 to 10 years. Then there's the Barbera d'Alba, which shows off the diversity of the region. You get ripe, dark fruits like blackberry and black cherry, plus plum, spice, and a touch of oak. It's dry, flavorful, with good acidity that balances the fruit. Medium body, smooth tannins, and a persistent finish with dark fruit and minerals. This one's best within 5 to 8 years. And the sources mention a Langhe Nebbiolo too, another accessible Nebbiolo, and they hint at some limited edition wines that really showed his willingness to experiment and his passion for capturing the essence of Piemonte.
It sounds like each wine offers its own unique experience of the aromas and flavors of Piemonte. And of course, these wines aren't static. They evolve over time, and each vintage has its own personality.
You know it. Vintage variation is a big part of the story. A warmer year might give you wines that are riper, fruitier, with softer tannins, while a cooler year could lead to wines with more acidity and a lighter, more delicate style. And of course, we can't ignore the elephant in the room. Climate change. It's a challenge everywhere, including Piemonte. We're seeing higher average temperatures, more extreme weather, changes in rainfall. This can mean harvests happen earlier. There are shifts in the grape's acidity and sugar levels, even changes in the aromas. Ratti, and now his successors, have had to adapt, adjusting how they grow the grapes and make the wine, always with that respect for terroir in mind. This might mean choosing different grape clones that are more resilient, managing the vine canopy to protect the grapes from too much sun, and finding the right balance in the winemaking process. But even with these challenges, the tradition, the knowledge, the expertise in Piemonte means that winemakers like the Rattis can continue making elegant, complex wines that reflect Lamora.
It's clear that Renato Ratti was a game changer for Barolo. Can you sum up his main contributions and how they've influenced the region and the world?
His work had a huge impact. He really pushed for modernizing Barolo production. He brought in scientific principles, like using temperature control during fermentation and shortening maceration times. He invested in modern equipment. All this raised the quality bar for everyone. He was also a pioneer in recognizing and promoting the importance of terroir. His meticulous work mapping the vineyards, studying those microclimates, finding those special single vineyard sites like Marcinasco, it showed everyone how much Nebbiolo could express its origin. It was a foundation for the single vineyard approach we see today. And he did all this while balancing respect for tradition with intelligent innovation. He refined the style of Barolo, making it more approachable without sacrificing complexity or aging potential. He helped people understand the Barolo DOCG, its focus on origin and identity.
And his influence wasn't limited to his own wines, right?
No way. He was a real inspiration in the long. His success and his modern approach encouraged other producers to up their game, adopt new techniques, and focus on quality. He was also generous with his knowledge, teaching and mentoring a new generation of winemakers. By showing the world just how great Barolo could be, he helped raise the standards of the whole region. And of course, the international acclaim, the awards, the recognition from top critics, All of that was crucial in establishing Barolo as a world-class wine. His Barolo Marsanasco became a benchmark for elegance and finesse in Barolo.
And thankfully, his legacy continues through his son Pietro and the family.
Exactly. Pietro has stayed true to his father's values: the commitment to quality, the respect for terroir, the pursuit of excellence. He's brought in some new ideas, but has always kept that Ratti philosophy and spirit alive. The Barolo Marsanasco remains their flagship wine, a testament to that vision. The family is actively involved, making sure this legacy is passed on to the next generation. That continuity is key to preserving the essence of what Renato Ratti started. He wasn't just a talented winemaker, he was a visionary. He got Barolo, its essence, he helped modernize it, put it on the world map, and his legacy inspires people to this day.
It's clear he was a pivotal figure in Barolo, but the source material also highlights his role as an ambassador for Barolo to the world. How did he do that?
Well, he was very active on the international scene. He
Okay.
went to wine events, tastings, promotional tours, you name it. He became a powerful advocate for Barolo and Nebbiolo, and he did it with passion, knowledge, and charisma. Wine critics, sommeliers, wine lovers, they all had so much respect for him.
What was his vision for Barolo's future in the global wine market?
He truly believed that Barolo could stand shoulder to shoulder with the best wines from Bordeaux and Burgundy. He emphasized the importance of preserving the unique character of Barolo, its authenticity, producing high-quality wines, and telling the world about what makes Barolo special. He always said, respect the tradition, but embrace innovation to really show off the terroir.
So it was about more than just selling wine for him.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
He loved sharing his passion for wine and for Italian culture. To him, wine was a way to express Italian culture, the history of the region, and his own personal love for it all. He had this infectious enthusiasm. When you talked to him or tasted his wines, you weren't just tasting a drink. You were experiencing a culture and connecting with the land.
And his contributions were recognized during his lifetime.
Oh yeah, for sure. He won tons of awards and honors both in Italy and internationally, becoming a legend in Italian wine. The recognition from those big-name critics was huge in putting him and Barolo as a whole on the map.
So to be clear, he was a transformative figure, not just in how he made wine, but also in how he presented and celebrated Barolo to the world.
Exactly. He was a visionary who revolutionized Barolo with his combination of scientific rigor and smart innovation. His work on mapping the vineyards and researching specific Nebbiolo clones was groundbreaking. And he brought modern techniques into the cellar, raising the bar for everyone.
And his impact is still felt today.
Absolutely. His legacy is all about quality, innovation, and passion. His wines are still seen as benchmarks, showing his dedication to terroir and his pursuit of perfection. And his vision, his commitment, continues to inspire winemakers everywhere. He played a huge role in making Barolo the global icon it is today, and he inspired a whole new generation of Italian winemakers to focus on their own terroirs. His legacy continues to shape the world of wine.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into the life and work of Renato Ratti, it's obvious that he was so much more than just a talented winemaker. He was a visionary who not only modernized Barolo production, but also championed the importance of terroir and brought Barolo to the world stage. And his influence is still shaping the wines of Barolo today.
Now, here's something to think about. How does learning about people like Renato Ratti, their vision, their dedication, change how you see and enjoy a bottle of wine? Knowing the story, the philosophy, the passion behind it all, it adds a whole new dimension to the experience. Maybe this deep dive will inspire you to explore Barolo further. Maybe seek out a bottle from a producer who was influenced by Ratti's work.
I completely agree. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the incredible life and legacy of Renato Ratti.